The grand ballroom was glowing with golden light, as if someone had captured sunlight and placed it in crystal chandeliers. Soft music played from hidden speakers, the kind of music meant to make rich people feel even richer. Guests in beautiful gowns and expensive suits moved around the hall, talking loudly, laughing dramatically, and showing off their jewelry as if they were on a stage. Every detail of the party screamed luxury, from the marble floors to the tall windows covered in silk curtains, but in the middle of all this glamour was someone almost invisible. Evelyn moved quietly between the guests, carrying a silver tray filled with glasses of sparkling champagne. She wore a simple black and white uniform, nothing like the glittering clothes around her. Her shoes were slightly worn, her hair tied back neatly, and her expression soft and polite. She walked carefully, always making sure not to get in anyone's way, because she knew the guests didn't come here to notice someone like her. To them, she was just the waitress. Evelyn didn't mind working hard, but she always felt a little out of place in an environment like this. She had grown up in a small apartment with parents who valued kindness more than wealth. After her father passed away, she took on extra jobs to help pay for her mother's medical bills. Tonight's gala was only one of many shifts she had picked up that week. She was tired, but she pushed through with quiet strength, reminding herself that every hour she worked mattered. As she moved around the room, she heard pieces of discussions about new business deals, luxurious vacations, and expensive artwork. She passed tables filled with gourmet food she could never afford, and she watched the guests sip drinks that cost more than what she earned in a day. But she kept her eyes down, her smile gentle, and her steps steady. Among the rich crowd was Victor Halden, the millionaire hosting the party. He was known for his wealth, but also for his pride. Victor liked being admired, and he loved the attention he received at parties like this. His gray suit was tailored perfectly, and he walked with the confidence of someone who always got what he wanted. People around him laughed at every joke he made, even when it wasn't funny. He enjoyed that kind of power. Victor's eyes drifted around the room, looking for something or someone to entertain him. That was when he noticed Evelyn. She wasn't doing anything special, just quietly offering drinks to a small group of guests. But something about her calmness annoyed him. In a room full of people trying to impress him, her quiet presence felt out of place. Maybe it was the way she didn't try to catch anyone's attention. Maybe it was the softness in her face. Or maybe it was simply because she did not treat him like a king the way others did. He watched her for a moment. Sipping his drink, a slight smirk forming on his face, Evelyn continued her work without noticing his gaze. She moved from one side of the room to the other, gently handing out drinks, clearing empty glasses, and making sure every guest was comfortable. She tried her best to stay unnoticed because attention from wealthy guests often meant trouble. Some were rude. Some were demanding. Others expected special treatment simply because they were rich. Evelyn had learned long ago that the best thing she could do was blend into the background and finish her shift without any problems, but even though she tried to stay invisible, she couldn't hide her natural grace. Her movements were smooth, almost elegant. Some guests noticed her and offered a polite nod or a soft smile, appreciating her calm presence. But most people didn't see her at all. They were too wrapped up in their own world to notice someone serving them. Still, Evelyn remained patient. Every time she passed by a window, she caught a glimpse of her reflection, a tired young woman trying her best in a room full of people who would never understand her struggles. She sighed softly and straightened her uniform. Just a few more hours, she whispered to herself. Meanwhile, Victor continued to eye her with growing curiosity. Something deep inside him enjoyed testing people, especially those he believed were beneath him. He found it entertaining to create small moments where he could show his power, and Evelyn, with her quiet nature, seemed like the perfect target. He had no idea who she really was or what she had gone through, but to him, she was simply a waitress. And in his mind, that meant she was someone he could control easily. As the night went on, Evelyn kept up her work, unaware that her life was about to change. She thought it was just another shift, another luxurious party she would forget by the next morning, but a single mistake, a tiny moment that anyone could have made, would soon draw all eyes toward her. and set the stage for something she never expected. The room sparkled with laughter and music, but Evelyn remained the quiet thread holding everything together, unnoticed in the glow of wealth. What she didn't know was that her talent, hidden deep inside her like a forgotten treasure, was waiting for the right moment to shine. And that moment was getting closer with every second she walked through the glittering hall. Evelyn had been working for almost 3 hours when the small mistake happened, so small that in any normal place, people would have simply laughed or brushed it off. But this was not a normal place. And the people here were not normal people. They were wealthy, proud, and always hungry for gossip or drama. Especially when it did not involve them. She carried a tray with 6 champagne glasses, walking slowly through a group of guests who were discussing investments and bragging about their expensive hobbies. Her hands were steady at first, but as someone behind her suddenly laughed loudly, she flinched, not enough to drop the tray, but enough to make one glass slide slightly. She tried to fix it quickly, but the glass slipped. It didn't shatter. It simply fell onto the carpeted floor, making a soft thud. The champagne inside spilled, forming a small golden puddle. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. Enough for the wrong person to notice. Victor Halden, his head snapped toward the sound like a hawk noticing movement in the grass. A slow, delighted smile spread across his face, as if he had just been given a new toy to play with. The guests around Evelyn paused and looked down at her, some with raised eyebrows, others with annoyance, as if she had interrupted their perfect evening. Evelyn felt her face turn warm with embarrassment. Her heart thudded in her chest. Mistakes like this always brought trouble, and she knew it. Really? One woman muttered loudly. How clumsy. Another man shook his head. They really should hire more experienced staff. Evelyn bent down immediately, apologizing softly as she reached for the napkins on her tray. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain. She just wanted to clean up the mess and disappear, but Victor wasn't going to let that happen. He stepped forward with slow, dramatic steps, the way a king might approach someone who had insulted him. His voice rose above the quiet murmurs. Well, he said loudly so that everyone nearby could hear. I didn't realize the entertainment for the night included a comedy show. A few people laughed politely. Even though the joke wasn't funny, Evelyn kept her head down. She didn't want to meet his eyes. Victor loved that. You know, he continued, swirling his drink with a smug expression. Some people are good at serving. Some people are good at cleaning. And some people are good at dropping things. More awkward laughter followed. Evelyn forced a small smile, because arguing with a man like him would only make things worse. I'm very sorry, sir, she said softly. Victor heard her apology, but he wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He wanted to turn the moment into a performance, a scene he could control. You look nervous, he said, pretending to sound concerned. Are you sure this job is right for you? It requires coordination, you know. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked sympathetic, others entertained. No one stepped in to stop him. Evelyn finished cleaning the spill, then stood up slowly, still avoiding his eyes. Maybe, Victor said, tapping his glass thoughtfully, you have some other talent. Something more fitting than carrying drinks. Evelyn swallowed. I'm here to serve, sir. Oh, come on, Victor chuckled. Everyone has something they're good at. He looked around dramatically, searching for inspiration. His gaze stopped at the grand piano on the other side of the room, polished, beautiful, and untouched since the party began. A mischievous spark lit up in his eyes. Perfect, he thought. Tell me, he said loudly, can you play the piano? Evelyn froze, her breath hitched. Her fingers instinctively curled toward her palms. That question hit a place inside her she had locked away years ago. Victor noticed her reaction and smiled wider. You can. Can't you? He pushed, enjoying the tension. I used to, she said quietly before she could stop herself. Used to? Victor repeated mockingly. Ah, so our little waitress has a musical past? Now more guests turned to watch. A small circle formed. Evelyn could feel dozens of eyes on her, pressing in from all sides. Victor clapped his hands once. Wonderful. Why don't you show us? Go ahead. Play something. Evelyn looked around in panic. Sir, I'm working. I still have tables to... Oh, please, he interrupted. Don't be difficult. We'd all love to hear you. Some guests nodded, others shrugged. A few whispered to each other, already expecting something embarrassing to happen. Evelyn shook her head gently. I don't think it's appropriate. Victor's smile faded, replaced with a hard, cold look. Is this your way of refusing your host? He asked, his voice suddenly sharp. Her stomach twisted. She needed this job. She needed the money. She couldn't afford to anger him. I'm not refusing, she whispered, trying to stay calm. Well then, he said, his voice rising again. Play? Don't make me repeat myself. The room grew quieter. Evelyn felt trapped, humiliated. Her hands trembled as she looked toward the piano, a beautiful instrument she once loved. Now, feeling like a stage built for her downfall. She had no choice. With slow, hesitant steps, she began walking toward it, behind her. Victor smirked in victory. He didn't expect beauty. He didn't expect talent. He expected a mess, a funny moment to laugh at later, but he had no idea what he was about to witness. And neither did Evelyn. Evelyn walked slowly toward the piano, each step feeling heavier than the last. The bright lights in the ballroom suddenly felt too sharp, almost painful, as if they were exposing every fear she tried to hide. She kept her eyes on the floor, wishing she could disappear into it. The guests parted slightly as she passed, forming a loose circle around the piano, curious and ready for some entertainment. Victor followed a few steps behind her, his lips curved into a satisfied smirk. He looked like a man who had already planned the ending of the story and was just waiting to enjoy it. Around him, guests whispered, some excited, some confused, and a few uncomfortable with how cruel the situation felt, but none brave enough to speak up. Evelyn finally reached the piano bench. Her hands were shaking so much she had to hide them behind her back. She hadn't touched a piano in years, not since her father died. He had been the one who taught her, who stayed up with her during long nights of practice, who called her his little musician. After he passed, the sound of a piano felt like a ghost of a life she couldn't return to. The room felt too quiet now. All the laughter, all the music, all the clinking glasses had faded. Everyone was waiting. Evelyn slowly sat down on the piano bench. She stared at the keys, black and white, simple and familiar, yet somehow terrifying. She tried to take a deep breath, but her chest felt tight. Behind her, Victor's voice cut through the silence. Well, he said loudly. Don't tell me you forgot how to play. His tone made a few people chuckle. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, trying to ignore the sting of humiliation. She wanted to walk away, but she knew she couldn't. She needed the job. She needed the money. And she refused to let Victor fire her in front of everyone. Her fingers hovered above the keys, but did not touch them. She remembered her father's voice, soft, gentle, encouraging. Music is not about being perfect, he used to say. It's about speaking from your heart when words can't. She swallowed hard. She hadn't felt like she had a heart for a long time. Life had taken too much. But maybe, just maybe, she could borrow a piece of the person she used to be. She lifted her hands again. Victor sighed dramatically. Any day now. His annoyance spread across the circle like a shadow. Evelyn pressed her fingers onto the keys, not playing yet, just feeling the cool surface. The piano was expensive, beautifully maintained. It didn't deserve to be part of a cruel joke. Neither did she. Her hands trembled again, and she quickly pulled them back into her lap. Her breathing grew fast, uneven. She felt dozens of eyes stabbing into her. Some people waited for her to play well. Others waited for her to fail. Victor waited for her to embarrass herself. Her throat tightened. She wasn't ready. Her mind screamed at her to get up and run, but then something unexpected happened from somewhere behind the crowd. She heard a voice, soft, gentle, from an older woman. Take your time. Evelyn looked up in surprise. She couldn't see who said it, but the warmth in those words felt like a small hand on her shoulder, giving her courage. Victor rolled his eyes. Oh, please, she's wasting everyone's time. But Evelyn didn't look at him this time. She looked back at the piano. Something inside her shifted just a little, like a crack of light entering a dark room. She straightened her back. Her breathing slowed. Her fingers touched the keys again, this time more firmly. The crowd leaned slightly forward. She pressed one note. A soft, gentle sound filled the air, small, delicate, but full of something real. It wasn't music yet. It was a whisper. Victor raised an eyebrow. Is that it? But Evelyn didn't hear him anymore. She touched another note. Then another. Her fingers remembered more than she realized. Her father's teachings, the hours she spent practicing as a child, the performances at school recitals, all of it rushed back like a wave. The melody didn't begin suddenly. It grew slowly, like a flower opening petal by petal. At first, the room stayed quiet because no one knew what to expect. But as Evelyn's hands began moving faster, more confidently, the atmosphere shifted. The notes connected. The rhythm formed. The music became alive. Evelyn didn't choose a song. The song chose her. It came from deep inside, a mix of sorrow, hope, pain, and memories she thought she had buried forever. Her eyes softened, her shoulders relaxed. And soon, it was not a nervous waitress sitting at the piano. It was an artist. The guests who had been whispering fell silent. Even those preparing to laugh at her now stared in disbelief. The melody rolled through the ballroom like a warm wind, touching everyone, awakening something gentle in the grand, cold room. Victor's smirk slowly faded. He blinked, confused, almost offended by what he was hearing. This wasn't a performance to mock. This was something he could never have predicted. Evelyn kept playing, her hands moving with growing confidence. Each note shimmered beautifully, filling the space in a way the party's background. Music never could. People who had ignored her all night now couldn't look away. She didn't see Victor's expression dropping. She didn't see the guests leaning closer. She didn't see the small smiles forming on people's faces. She was lost in the music, finally, wonderfully lost, for the first time in years. And the man who forced her to the piano, the man who expected to humiliate her, was completely, absolutely silent. The melody flowed from Evelyn's fingers like a river that had finally been freed after years of being trapped behind a dam. Every note carried a piece of her, her struggles, her memories, her loss, and the quiet strength she never showed the world. The piano keys responded gently, almost lovingly, as if they had been waiting for her touch. The ballroom was so silent it felt unreal. Even the air seemed to pause, listening. Evelyn didn't notice the stunned expressions forming around her. She didn't notice the way some guests slowly lowered their drinks, or how others leaned forward with their mouths slightly open. All she knew was the music. It wrapped around her like a warm blanket, pulling her deeper into a place that felt safe and familiar, something she hadn't felt in years. The song grew richer, deeper. Her fingers danced across the keys, confident now, moving with the ease of someone who had been born for this moment. Her eyes glistened as memories played in her mind. Her father sitting beside her during lessons, tapping the beat gently on her shoulder. Her younger self laughing when she finally mastered a difficult passage. The applause during her school recital. The warmth of dreams she once held so dearly, and then, like a shadow passing over the sun, she remembered why she stopped. The day the music in her house fell silent forever. The day she packed her piano sheet music into a box and stuffed it under her bed. The day she promised herself she would never play again because every note reminded her of him. But here she was, playing like her heart had never stopped beating for music. A tiny tear slipped from the corner of her eye, but she didn't stop. She kept playing, letting everything flow through her hands. And strangely, instead of hurting, the music felt healing, as if the piano was telling her, it's time to come back. The guests around her were no longer just watching. They were feeling. A woman near the front pressed her hand against her chest. A man wiped his eye quickly, hoping no one noticed. A young couple looked at each other, surprised at how emotional they felt. It was the kind of music that touched something inside people that they didn't even know was there. But the most stunned person in the room was Victor Halden. He stood frozen, his back straight, his expression shifting between confusion, disbelief, and something unfamiliar, something close to fear. He had expected a disaster, something to laugh about, something to mock. But instead, he had unintentionally given the room the most beautiful moment of the evening. His face tightened. This wasn't the script he wanted. He watched Evelyn's fingers glide effortlessly, watched the crowd fall under her spell, and for the first time that night he wasn't the center of attention. His eyes darted around nervously. People weren't looking at him anymore. They weren't laughing at his jokes or admiring his wealth. They were admiring her, and it bothered him more than he expected. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued playing, unaware that she had turned the night upside down. She felt something inside her break open in the best way, like she was rediscovering a missing part of herself. Each note made her feel lighter, braver, more alive. The melody finally softened. Her hands slowed, her fingers drifting into the last gentle chords. She held the final note for a moment, letting it linger in the air like a sigh. Then, with a quiet exhale, her hands slipped away from the keys and rested in her lap. Silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full of emotion, full of awe, full of the echoes of her music. Evelyn lifted her head slowly, her heart racing as she finally looked around. She expected confusion, maybe even boredom. Instead, she saw faces filled with amazement, soft smiles, tearful eyes, breathless expressions. No one moved. No one spoke. It was like the room itself was taking a moment to absorb what had just happened. Victor tried to recover first, clearing his throat loudly, but no one looked at him. The noise felt rude, almost disruptive, like someone slamming a door during a prayer. He shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence slipping. Then, somewhere near the back of the crowd, a single pair of hands began clapping. Slow, steady, respectful. Everyone turned to see who it was, a tall, older man with silver hair and thoughtful eyes. He looked impressed, deeply impressed. And then, as if a barrier had finally broken, more applause joined in. First a few people, then a dozen. Then the entire ballroom. The clapping grew louder and louder until it filled the room like thunder. Guests stood up. Some cheered. Others whistled. A few even wiped away tears. Evelyn sat stunned, her eyes wide. She had never expected this, never imagined it. For a moment she didn't know what to do, so she simply bowed her head slightly, her hands trembling. People stepped forward, wanting to speak to her. But before any of them reached her, she caught sight of Victor. He wasn't clapping, he was staring at her with a strange mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. As if he couldn't accept what had just happened. As if he had lost control of something he thought he owned. Evelyn looked down at the piano again, her heart pounding. She had no idea that her life had just changed, but everyone else in the room knew. The applause slowly faded, but the feeling it left behind stayed in the air like warm sunlight after a rainy morning. Evelyn sat completely still on the piano bench, almost afraid to move, as if the moment might shatter if she breathed too loudly. Her heartbeat thumped in her ears, louder than the clapping had been. She looked around, confused by the smiles, the admiration, the soft looks guests were giving her. It felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. People were actually applauding her. Not because they felt sorry for her. Not because she was being polite, but because they were genuinely moved. A woman in a red gown stepped closer. That was breathtaking, she said softly, her voice carrying real emotion. Where did you learn to play like that? Before Evelyn could answer, another guest approached. Do you perform anywhere? You should, he said eagerly. Evelyn's cheeks turned pink. She shook her head shyly, unable to find the right words. She wasn't used to this kind of attention for something she usually kept hidden. Deep inside her heart, more people gathered, forming a gentle crowd around her. For the first time all night, she didn't feel like the invisible waitress. She felt seen, truly seen. A warm, overwhelming feeling filled her eyes with tears, but she wiped them quickly. Before anyone noticed, among the crowd was the older man who had clapped first. He walked up slowly, his posture straight, his eyes sharp yet warm. Evelyn felt a strange sense of respect for him right away. He wasn't like the others. His gaze wasn't noisy or greedy. It was thoughtful. You have an extraordinary gift, he said, his voice calm and deep. Do you study music professionally? Evelyn swallowed hard. No, sir, she said softly. I used to play a long time ago. He studied her for a moment, then nodded gently, as if he understood more than she said. Well, it's been a long time since I've heard someone play with such emotion. You don't just play the notes? You tell a story. His words echoed in her chest. She suddenly felt her father's presence warm, comforting, proud, before she could reply. Victor barged through the crowd, his voice dragging attention back to himself like a rough hand pulling a curtain shut. All right. That's enough, he said sharply, clapping his hands once as if dismissing everyone. She played a song, wonderful. But let's not exaggerate. The room's warm energy chilled slightly. Some guests frowned at Victor's tone. Others shifted uncomfortably. They had been touched by Evelyn's music, and Victor's attempt to ruin that feeling annoyed them. Victor stepped closer to Evelyn, his lips tightening. You may return to your job now, he said coldly. There's still work to be done. Evelyn blinked, startled by the sudden change in tone. Yes, sir. But before she stood up, the older man spoke again. Actually, he said firmly, addressing Victor but keeping his eyes on Evelyn, I would like to speak with her. Alone, if you don't mind. Victor froze. His jaw clenched. The older man continued calmly, I'm Henry Whitmore. A wave of murmur spread across the room. Evelyn didn't recognize the name, but everyone else clearly did. Henry Whitmore, the internationally respected music director, the head of the Whitmore Academy of Fine Arts, the man who discovered and trained some of the world's best musicians. That Henry Whitmore. Victor's confidence faltered. Henry turned back to Evelyn. May I? He asked, offering her the chance to stand and walk with him. Evelyn hesitated. I'm on shift, she whispered. I don't want to get in trouble. Henry smiled kindly. I'll speak to your employer. You won't be in trouble. His voice carried a quiet authority that made people trust him instantly. Victor's face twisted, but he said nothing. He couldn't argue with Henry Whitmore in front of influential guests. With gentle steps, Evelyn rose from the piano bench and walked beside Henry. They moved toward a quieter corner of the room where the noise softened. Henry took a moment before speaking. Evelyn, you're talented. Exceptionally talented? Where have you been hiding all this time? She looked down at her hands. I stopped playing after my father passed away. Henry's expression softened. I'm sorry. Loss can paralyze the things we love. Evelyn nodded quietly. I didn't think I could ever play again. Not properly. And then tonight, I didn't have a choice. But you played anyway, Henry said. And what I heard was raw, emotional, and honest. Talent like that cannot stay hidden forever. Evelyn's throat tightened. It's too late, she whispered. I can't afford music school. I can barely afford my mom's medicine. Henry shook his head slowly. It's never too late. And you don't need to afford anything. She blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Henry paused, studying her for a long moment. Finally, he smiled. I would like to offer you a place at the Whitmore Academy. Full scholarship? Evelyn's breath caught. What? She whispered, her heart shaking. You deserve a chance to pursue your gift, Henry said. And I would be honored to help you. Her vision blurred with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand. Unable to speak. She had come to the party as an invisible waitress. Now her entire future was opening in front of her like a door she never thought she'd see again. Victor watched from across the room, his face pale with anger and disbelief. This was not how things were supposed to go, but for once, his power meant nothing, because the girl he tried to humiliate was rising. Evelyn stood frozen, unable to fully believe what she had just heard. Her entire body felt light, almost weightless, as if she might float away at any second. A scholarship? To a world-famous academy? It sounded like something from someone else's life, not hers. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Henry Whitmore smiled warmly, the kind of smile that made people feel safe. You don't need to say anything now. Just think about it. But I want you to know that your talent is rare, Evelyn. It's the kind that deserves to be nurtured, not hidden behind a serving tray. The words touched something deep in her, a place she had kept closed for so many years. She remembered the nights she sat beside her father as he played his old piano, the way he said she had magic in her fingers. She had dismissed it as a father's love back then, but tonight she finally wondered if he had been right. Before she could answer, a loud, harsh voice cut through the moment. "Excuse me." Victor Halden marched toward them, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. His face was flushed with frustration, his jaw clenched tight. The crowd watched silently, sensing tension building again. Henry turned calmly to face him. "Yes, Mr. Halden?" Victor forced a smile, but anger simmered beneath it. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Miss Evelyn is an employee. She has duties to finish? This is a formal event, not a talent show." A few guests exchanged irritated looks. They had witnessed her brilliance. They knew Victor was acting out of bruised pride, not professionalism. Henry raised an eyebrow. "She played because you forced her to," he said evenly. "She didn't ask for attention. You gave it to her." Victor stiffened. "That's irrelevant. She is supposed to serve guests, not—" "She served us all tonight," Henry interrupted. "More than any glass of champagne could." The guests murmured in agreement. Evelyn felt her heart pounding. She wanted to disappear again, but at the same time, she felt a new sense of courage rising inside her, a courage born from her music, and from someone finally believing in her. She looked at Victor. "I can finish my shift," she said quietly, trying to keep peace, but Henry shook his head. "No, you don't need to continue tonight." He paused, then added, "I'll compensate Mr. Halden for any inconvenience." Victor barked out a short laugh. "Compensate me? Do you think this is about money?" Henry's calm gaze didn't waver. "Yes," he said simply, "because it always is with people like you." The guests gasped softly. Victor's face turned a dangerous shade of red. His ego had been wounded in the worst possible way for everyone to see. He leaned closer to Henry, lowering his voice. "I don't care who you are. That girl works for me. And I won't let her walk out like some kind of prodigy. She's just a waitress." Evelyn flinched at the words. Henry's voice remained steady. "You're wrong," he said. "She is a musician. And whether you like it or not, the entire room knows it." Victor clenched his fists. "She embarrassed me." Henry looked genuinely confused. "No, Mr. Halden, she embarrassed no one." "You embarrassed yourself." The whispers around the room grew. Victor suddenly looked much smaller than he had earlier. Stripped of the power he loved so much, for the first time all evening, Evelyn saw him clearly not as a rich, powerful man, but as someone fragile in all the wrong ways. Victor's voice cracked with fury. "This is my event. My ballroom. My guests." Henry stepped closer, his voice quiet but sharp. "And yet, somehow, none of them are looking at you." Victor froze, realizing it was true. All eyes were on Evelyn and Henry. He had lost control of the room. Some guests stepped away from Victor, not wanting to be associated with his behavior. Others shook their heads in disapproval. The mood of the party had shifted completely. Power had moved from the millionaire to the girl he tried to humiliate. Victor narrowed his eyes at Evelyn. "You think you're special now?" He spat quietly. "You're nothing without people like me." Evelyn's breath trembled, but she surprised herself when she spoke. "That's not true," she said softly. Victor blinked. He had never expected her to talk back. Evelyn's voice strengthened. "My father taught me something a long time ago. He said people like you can take away a job or a chance or even a dream, but they can't take away talent." She swallowed, then added, "And tonight, I remembered who I was before life got hard." Victor stepped back, shaken. Henry placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Well said." Evelyn exhaled shakily, feeling a strange mixture of fear and relief wash over her. She had spoken up. For the first time in a long time, she had stood up for herself. Victor glared at her and then at Henry. "This isn't over," he muttered, but when he turned around, he found no support in the crowd. People avoided his gaze. Some even glared at him. A few guests walked away entirely, whispering things he couldn't hear, but he knew they weren't flattering. He had lost the room. And Evelyn was beginning to find her voice. Henry leaned toward her. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her hands were still trembling. "Yes, I think I am." "Good," he said. "Because your life is about to change?" Evelyn looked back at the piano, the instrument that had unlocked everything she had buried, for the first time in years. She felt hope. The ballroom slowly returned to its soft music and gentle murmurs, but something important had changed. The atmosphere no longer revolved around Victor Halden's wealth or his power. Instead, it carried a warm, buzzing energy, like everyone had just witnessed something rare and unforgettable. Evelyn stood beside Henry, still trying to fully understand what had happened. Just an hour ago, she had been serving drinks, hoping to get through the evening without trouble. Now her entire world seemed to be spinning in a new direction, one she had never imagined. As Henry guided her away from the crowd, several guests approached her with admiration. A woman with elegant pearls touched her arm lightly. "Your performance was beautiful, dear. You must continue playing." Another man smiled kindly. "I haven't heard such emotion in years. You made the whole room feel something tonight." A younger girl around 16 rushed forward shyly. "I want to learn piano too. You inspired me." Evelyn felt overwhelmed, her heart fluttering with a mix of joy and disbelief. She thanked each person with soft words and gentle smiles, but a part of her still couldn't accept that this was real. Compliments were something she never received, not like this. Not from strangers who meant it. Henry waited patiently until the crowd slowly dispersed back into the event. When they finally had some space, he looked at Evelyn again. "You handled yourself incredibly well," he said warmly. Evelyn let out a small breath. "I was terrified." "And yet you played beautifully," Henry replied. "Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do what you must despite fear." His words settled in her chest like a quiet truth. Before she could respond, a familiar voice called out hesitantly behind them. "Evelyn?" She turned and saw one of her coworkers, Maya, a kind waitress who had worked the same shift. Maya approached with wide eyes full of both worry and awe. "Are you okay?" she asked, grabbing Evelyn's hands. "I saw everything. I couldn't believe how Victor treated you." Evelyn smiled softly. "I'm okay, really, better than okay, maybe." Maya's eyes sparkled. "You were amazing. I never knew you could play like that. You looked different. Like you belonged there." The words made Evelyn's heart swell. Belonged. That was something she had never felt before tonight. Maya looked at Henry curiously. "And who is this?" Henry offered his hand politely. "Henry Whitmore." Maya's jaw dropped. "The Henry Whitmore? Evelyn, do you know who?" Evelyn laughed nervously. "I do now." Henry chuckled lightly. "Don't worry. I'm not as intimidating as people make me sound." Maya squeezed Evelyn's arm tightly. "Evelyn, this is huge!" Evelyn nodded, but fear slipped quietly into her expression. "It feels like a dream. What if it disappears when I wake up? What if I'm not good enough?" Henry gently shook his head. "Doubt is normal, but your talent is real. And so is this opportunity." Maya added quickly, "You can do this. I've seen you work harder than anyone here. If anyone deserves a chance, it's you." Their words settled inside her like warm light. For a moment, Evelyn glanced across the ballroom and caught sight of Victor standing alone near the bar. His expression was clouded with bitterness and humiliation. He watched her with a cold stare, but for once he didn't act. He had no more moves to play. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. Henry noticed Victor looking as well. "Ignore him," he told her gently. "He lost control tonight, not you." Evelyn nodded slowly. "It still feels strange. I've spent so long trying not to be noticed." "And tonight," Henry said, "the world noticed you for the right reason." Just then, the event organizer approached them, a tall woman with a headset and clipboard. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said politely. But Mr. Whitmore, the media team would like a short interview, and they also want to ask about the pianist. The pianist? Evelyn echoed in confusion. The organizer smiled warmly. Yes, they want to know who you are and how you played like that. Evelyn felt her knees weaken. Me? In an interview? Henry placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Only if you're comfortable. You don't have to do anything tonight? Evelyn swallowed. She imagined cameras, microphones, questions. It terrified her. But then she remembered how it felt to play, how free she felt. How alive. Maybe this was a part of her new path too. I'll try, she said softly. Good, Henry said, encouraging. Just speak from your heart. Maya squeezed her hand again. Go shine, Evelyn. As they walked toward a quieter corner where cameras were being set up, Evelyn felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She kept reminding herself to breathe, to stay calm, to trust herself. A reporter with a warm smile approached. Miss, Evelyn, correct? Could we ask you a few questions about your performance? Evelyn nodded nervously. Yes, the reporter began gently. How long have you been playing the piano? Evelyn hesitated only a moment before answering honestly. Since I was a little girl. But I stopped, for many years. And what inspired you to play tonight? The reporter asked. Evelyn paused. Her eyes softened. Someone tried to embarrass me, she said quietly. But instead, I remembered something I had forgotten. That music is a part of me. The reporter smiled, clearly moved. It certainly touched the entire room. More questions followed, but Evelyn found herself speaking more easily, her confidence growing with each answer. She didn't feel invisible anymore. For the first time, she was telling her own story, not hiding behind her struggles. When the interview ended, Henry stood beside her proudly. You did wonderfully. Evelyn exhaled. I can't believe this is happening. Henry nodded. Believe it, Evelyn. This is only the beginning. As they walked back toward the crowd, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile kind that breaks easily, but a solid, growing hope that maybe, just maybe, her future could finally be hers. As the night slowly came to an end, the ballroom felt different, not as a place filled with wealth and ego, but as a place where something meaningful had happened. The golden lights above didn't feel intimidating anymore. The sparkling gowns and polished suits didn't make Evelyn feel small. Instead, the room felt warm, almost welcoming, as if it had accepted her in a way she had never expected. People continued approaching her with kind words. Some asked if she would be performing again. Others simply wanted to shake her hand or tell her how much her music moved them. Evelyn thanked them shyly, her cheeks glowing with a type of happiness that felt new and precious. But as the minutes passed, exhaustion began to settle into her body. The whole night felt like a long dream, too bright, too emotional, too surprising to be real. Henry noticed the way her shoulders drooped slightly. You've had a big night, he said gently. You should go home and rest. Evelyn nodded, relieved but nervous. Thank you for everything. This is just the beginning, Henry said. Tomorrow we'll talk more about your scholarship. I'll arrange everything. Evelyn's heart fluttered again. The idea still felt unbelievable. I don't know how to thank you. Henry smiled. By pursuing your gift. That's all. Before he left, he added, and Evelyn, your father would be very proud. Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice shaking, Henry gave a small nod and walked away. Evelyn stood there quietly for a moment, letting the emotions wash over her. She felt like she could finally breathe. Like something heavy had been lifted off her chest. She returned to the staff area to collect her bag. Maya rushed over immediately and wrapped her in a tight hug. You're amazing, Maya said, her voice full of excitement. I'm so happy for you I could scream. Evelyn laughed through her tears. Thank you, Maya. I think everything is changing. Good, Maya said firmly. It's about time your life changed for the better. They hugged again before Evelyn left through the back door of the ballroom. The cool night air brushed against her face, calming her. She walked slowly toward the empty street, her steps light but thoughtful. Her mind raced with questions. Can I really do this? What if I fail? What if I'm not meant for this world? But another voice whispered inside her, soft, gentle, warm. You played today. And you found yourself again. She smiled and wiped her cheek. Just as she reached the sidewalk, she heard the door behind her open. She turned, expecting Maya. Instead, it was Victor Halden. He stepped out of the doorway, his expression dark and stiff. The cold air made his breath visible, but it wasn't nearly as cold as the look in his eyes. Evelyn froze. Victor walked toward her slowly, each step heavy with anger and wounded pride. So, he said, his voice low, you think you're something now? Evelyn swallowed hard but didn't step back. She had faced him once already. She could do it again. I don't think I'm anything, she said softly. I just, remembered who I used to be. Victor scoffed. A waitress with a hobby. Don't let tonight fool you. She met his glare with a calm she didn't know she had. Tonight wasn't about you. Victor's jaw tightened. Everything here is about me. It used to be, Evelyn said quietly. Not anymore? Victor blinked. For a moment, he looked confused, like he didn't recognize the girl standing in front of him. The girl who used to lower her eyes and apologize for everything. Evelyn continued, her voice steady. You tried to humiliate me. But instead, you gave me back the one thing I thought I had lost forever. Victor stared. Unable to reply, she stepped past him, ready to leave, but then paused. I'm not angry at you, she said softly, turning slightly. I'm just sorry for you. Because someone with so much has never learned how to be kind. Victor's face fell not in anger this time, but in something closer to shame. He looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Evelyn didn't wait for another reaction. She walked down the street, each step feeling stronger than the last. The city lights shimmered above her as if quietly celebrating her courage. When she finally reached the bus stop, she sat down and looked at her hands, the same hands that had carried trays, washed dishes, and tonight created music that touched hundreds. She closed her fingers gently, holding on to that feeling, hope, strength, a future. Her bus arrived. She stepped in and took a seat by the window. As the engine hummed, she leaned her head against the glass and allowed a tear to fall, not a tear of pain, but of joy. She imagined her father sitting next to her, smiling. You did it, Evelyn, she whispered. I'm coming back to the music. The bus rolled down the quiet street. The city lights blurred into soft streaks as she closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to dream again. Tomorrow, she would step into a new life. Tomorrow, she would walk into Henry's academy. Tomorrow, she would begin again. But tonight, she allowed herself to be proud. The girl who entered the gala as an invisible waitress was leaving as a musician.